Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about earning scholarships for college, and this isn't just for the academic or sporty kids. We're joined by Janet Addison, whose kids earned over $400,000 in scholarships. She's full of great advice and tips that you're not going to want to miss. Listeners, it's that time of year that brings a little pep in the step to mothers everywhere. It is back to school time. Are you feeling it, Julie and Mindy?
Yes, we need to play our cheering for I'm a Fan right now.
Yes, or that Staples commercial. It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yes.
This year, I have twins that are seniors, so my train of thought is naturally also gearing up for the whole college application process and all that needs to be done in this important year. And even though they're my fourth and fifth to go through this process, I still always feel like there's so much to learn and it's always changing. But one thing that has not changed is the need for these girls to get as much money in scholarships for college as possible because we did not hit the lottery in the last few years. So we need those scholarship dollars. And so, listeners, today we have a topic that is perfect for this time of year because we're talking with our friend Janet Addison, who became a pseudo-expert on scoring scholarships for her own kids, and she's here to share her wisdom on how you can do it too. And if your kids are not ready to apply, don't turn us off because anytime, anywhere that they are in high school, this is a good time to start preparing for how they can set themselves up to get as much of their college education paid for as possible. And longtime listeners may recognize Janet's voice today from our Moving in Midlife episode, which we aired last August in 2020. So she is a woman of many talents. Janet, welcome to Midlife Matters.
Thank you. I'm so glad y'all asked me back. It's a delight to be here.
I can't believe it's been a whole year.
I know. So much has changed.
Yeah. But before we get into all the details, will you introduce yourself to listeners and tell them how you came to learn so much about scholarships?
Well, I've got two kids who are now employed. One of them's married. So we got through high school, we got through college, and they are now doing their own thing. But when my daughter was about to be a senior, I guess the summer before her senior year, I met a friend at church who taught me how she got scholarships for her son. And it just blew my mind. And I decided I would try to get scholarships for her, maybe kind of spend her senior year working on getting scholarships. Otherwise, I was going to have to go back to work after she started college to pay for it, which I was willing to do. But I thought, I'm just going to give this a try. So a friend showed me how to do this, and I am kind of obsessive compulsive. So I jumped in deep and made it way more than we thought it was going to be. But anyway, it paid off for us. So it was time well spent.
That's amazing how I don't want to go back to work. So what can I do to not do that?
Right.
Sounds highly motivating to me.
Yes. If there was ever a reason to get on the internet, I don't know what else it would be. But before we get started, let's answer a burning question that some listeners might be thinking, oh, is this even applicable? My kid is not a straight A student. They're not a standout. Are there scholarships available for every kid, Janet?
I want to say yes, because all scholarships are not just for straight A kids. There are scholarships for students specifically who make more average grades. I've seen some for, minorities, for students who work, for students who maybe fall into a lower financial status, people who have certain kind of illnesses and disabilities. So I think there are scholarships for everyone. You might just have to work a little harder to find some of them. But nobody's going to get a scholarship if they don't apply for any. So part of the main thing is, first of all, you have to apply. And second of all, you have to apply early. You have to start thinking about this before everybody else does to get your name in in the line quicker than other people. And that's what I found really has made the difference is, people who start earlier looking for money, because the money does run out. Organizations and universities, they're on a budget too, and they run out of money just like everybody does. So the first ones to ask for it get the money, and the later ones sometimes don't.
That's a great point.
Could you be more specific about when would that practically be? So if your student is going to be a senior, do you need to be thinking about this their junior year? Do you need to, when is the application process kind of the prime time to be applying, I guess?
Well, the good news, especially for Marie, is it is not too late yet if your kid is about.
Oh, good.
Okay.
The better news would be if your kid's a freshman or a sophomore, because there are things you can start doing even when your kid's in ninth grade to help prepare for this, to make it an easier transition or an easier process. Ideally, like now in the summer, and y'all should be asking for people to write recommendation letters for your child, like teachers or coaches or bosses or things like that. Building their resume, getting your tax information together, because you have to submit your tax forms for a lot of scholarships. That's just part of it. So those kind of things you can be doing through the summer before they start school in the fall. You can also start figuring out what kind of essays they're going to write, thinking through, what are my career goals? And a lot of scholarships kind of have 2 or 3 common prompts that I went on and had my kids write. And then we would just recycle those essays for every scholarship we applied for. So those kind of things you can be doing now. And then when school starts, you really also ought to have had your top 2 or 3 schools selected already, and kind of know what the requirements are, the deadlines are, the costs are, all those kind of hoops you're going to have to jump through. So when school starts, you're ready to start applying to the schools. Mm-hmm. And you not only have to apply for admission, you have to apply for financial aid at each school too. Mm-hmm. So the earlier you apply, the sooner you get in the queue to get the balls rolling.
Yeah, and I'll just say that, yes, you have to apply for financial aid no matter what college you go to. This has been, to even get the automatic ACT merit scholarships, you still have to fill out your FAFSA. You will probably never see a dime. Doesn't even matter if you want to see a dime, and you know that you won't. You have to fill it out or they won't give you those. So everyone who goes to college has to fill that out.
Yes.
But I don't think that really comes out until the spring, I don't think. I'm not sure.
Well, I know when my kids were in school, it didn't open until January 1st of their senior year. Now, I think it opens a couple of months sooner.
Okay.
Possibly even as early as October of their senior year.
Okay, good to know.
So,
yeah, but I guess all that to say is even if you don't think you'll qualify for financial aid, you have to fill it out anyway. So
you do, even to get work study or whatever. You're right.
Jana, this seems like a daunting task to me. I remember seeing your big notebook. It was kind of a beast.
It was.
How did you know what to do? How did you get started?
Well, my friend showed me all the different types of scholarships that there were, and I just spent hours online. Every school that you apply to has a certain tier of scholarships. If you make this ACT or this GPA, you qualify for this. If you make this, you qualify for this. And then they have departmental scholarships, which is a whole different area on the website outside of financial aid. Like if your kid's really good in chemistry, might get a chemistry department scholarship or alumni scholarships. So each university has what they call institutional scholarship money available. And that is the easiest pot of money to tap into.
Okay.
And what I understand now is that it's more automatic than it used to be. Once you fill that stuff out, they will notify the students through their new university student email account saying, hey, this is what we're wanting to offer you. And of course you have to accept it. And then I started looking for what are called private scholarships. So institutional money can only be used at the school giving the scholarships. Private scholarships can be carried to whatever school your child decides to go to. And that would be like, Walmart or Coca-Cola, or if they work for Chick-fil-A, or if like my kids both got the Daughters of the American Revolution scholarships, Rotary Club, Lions Club, those kind of things. And then the more you look, there are, like disability scholarships, or scholarships with kids who have had cancer, or leadership scholarship. You just start Googling, scholarships in my state, scholarships for kids with blah, whatever pertains to your particular child. There are also just random drawings that you have as much chance as anybody does to
really
get money.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you get any of those, Janet?
We did not. That would have been really easy. So there are, that's what I did. I just Googled and Googled and Googled. And then Julie mentioned my notebook. I live by notebooks. I had about a 3.5 or 4 inch thick notebook.
Oh my gosh.
And when I would find a scholarship that I thought we might be interested in applying for, I would file it under a tab in the notebook that corresponded with the month that it was due. So I had a September tab, October, November, December, whatever. So when it was due, I would file it under that tab. So I would know, I don't have to deal with this one right this minute. I can wait. So then in the front of the notebook, I had copies of her resume, of all the recommendation letters, transcript, tax documents, essays, all that kind of stuff. So when I went to apply for a scholarship, I would pull whatever documents out of my notebook that the particular scholarship required. I would customize our cover letter template for that particular scholarship. I would put it in a clear plastic report cover type folder, because I always go overboard on details like that. And then I put it in an envelope. Well, usually I would leave all this stuff on the kitchen table. I would do this at night. I would leave it on the kitchen table. And as Mabry walked out of the house in the morning, she'd sign all her letters she was supposed to sign. And then I would put it all in the notebook, in the envelope, and mail it off. And then I would file the application back in the notebook with the date I mailed it, and then later, whatever the result was, if she didn't get it or we did or whatever, I'd make note of that.
Wow. Well, that leads right into my next question. I was going to ask you, Janet, did you get your kids involved in this process? Because it sounds very much like this is almost a full-time job for you. How did you handle that?
A full-time job for me.
Okay.
Because, Mabry wasn't going to have to pay for college, so it really didn't bother her how the money got there. But she did write the essays. She did ask the people to write letters of recommendation for her. She did the college visits and made her list of where she wanted to go. I edited everything. I hunted for all the scholarships and gathered the stuff. And then when the kids did get an award, I made them write thank you notes to the people that were giving them money.
Yeah,
that's a good idea.
So now my son was much more involved, because Mabry would kind of write it and then I would edit. I'm an editor, so I would edit it. But when it was my son's turn, he said, "Mom, I don't want you changing a word." I said, "Okay." And he would say, "No, I'm not going to apply for that." He was much more in control of his thing than Mabry was. But yes, they were involved.
But you're exactly right, Janet. Whoever is paying for the bill is the one that needs to be probably most involved in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I've had other people say, "Oh, would you teach my child how to do this?" And I've said, "Sure." But the kids really they're not that motivated. So,
Right.
Yeah, unless they're paying.
Yeah. You're right.
Janet, could you help just direct us? Where did you find all of the information for the scholarships? How did you know where to even look for it?
First of all, I need to say one thing that I think is really important. I think parents do kids a disservice by being rabid football fans their whole life, and this kid grows up thinking, "Oh, I'm going to go to Alabama because I love Alabama football," or whatever. When you might not really be able to afford send your kid to Alabama or wherever. So we only considered schools that we could afford with scholarships. Okay. For example, when my husband was a pastor, every pastor's family we knew in our state sent their kid to the same Baptist university. So we looked at that. But even with all the scholarships Mabry had on her own and what the school was going to give her, even for her academic or for her pastor's kid discount, we were still going to have to pay $10,000 a year to send her to that school. So we crossed it off the list. So parents need to, when I need a new car, I don't go to the Mercedes dealership. I go to the Ford place. Mm-hmm. That's the way you need to approach colleges, because if you have your heart set on an out-of-state school, that's going to double your cost. Mm-hmm. So make sure you're looking at schools that are really what you can afford, that will meet your child's career needs. Secondly, we applied for both types: the institutional scholarships, which is the money given by a university to be used at that school, and private scholarships, which are corporate or charitable organizations. You can check the college websites for that, but another good resource is the high school guidance counselors. And it is part of their job to help your kid get to college and help you find scholarships. And I became very good friends with the guidance counselor at our school because she said, I sometimes would grab kids in the hallway and make them apply for these scholarships because there was money going unused because the kids just wouldn't bother to come in and apply for it. So, and I even got on the high schools of other cities. Like I even looked, when we lived in Arkansas, I looked at Nashville High School guidance counselor lists of scholarships because I wanted to make sure I was finding the most number that I could find. So, and then I started, after I started into this for a while, I learned to determine, is the work that I've got to put into trying for this scholarship going to pay out enough to be worth the trouble? If I had to get her to write a new essay and all she was going to win was $500, we didn't even bother for that. But if it was a scholarship, some scholarships are one-time awards, and a lot of what freshmen get are one-time awards. But then there are some scholarships that pay every single year as long as you meet certain requirements. So, I would work harder on a big payoff. So, and that's why, we applied for 44 scholarships for our first child. And with our second child, we only did around 20 because then I realized what was worth the trouble and what was.
Wow.
44 scholarships.
I remember getting some advice when we were going through this process. Like, oh, you might not want to apply for the Coca-Cola scholarship because literally hundreds of thousands of people will be applying for that. So look for those smaller, more obscure, more specific. So I think that it sounds like that's what you did.
Yes.
So I guess maybe a misconception is you hear, I got a scholarship, but it sounds like you got scholarships and you piecemealed this.
That's exactly what we did.
And so it all added up.
Yes. And I think when you go do college visits with your child, you should make an appointment for just you and your child. I don't like those big college event days when your kid is there with 100 other people. So when you go by yourselves like that for a college visit, they get to know your kid. Your child gets a better feeling of if you like these professors or whatever. And that gives you an opportunity to make an appointment with the financial aid people at the college. Not the kid that sits at the front desk, but the adult who sits in the back office is who you want to talk to. Because I had a conversation with that lady at my daughter's school who not only explained the whole cost of attendance thing to me, which we need to talk about that in a minute. But she also said, and you will not find this in writing anywhere, but both of my kids went to different schools, and this played out both times. There is an allowance that it lets you exceed the maximum limit your freshman year to get a computer. So both of my kids got enough scholarship money to apply toward MacBook computers and printers. But again, if I hadn't had that conversation with the financial aid lady in person, she just mentioned that in passing. And so I think it's very valuable to talk to the people at the school who are in charge of giving out money, because you want them to know your name.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying your kids were awarded more money than the cost of attendance, and they were able to use that on computers?
Correct. Because by federal law, there is a limit as to what you can bring in. I think it's federal law, some law. There is a limit, a cap. But what you need to understand is your goal should be to fund cost of attendance, not just tuition, not just dorm costs, because every school has, tuition listed, dorm costs listed. And then when you add on books, travel, miscellaneous expenses, that's usually the cost of attendance is usually about $5,000 more than just what tuition and room and board is. That's even a higher number for like community colleges and when students live at home with your parents. If you're living at home with your parents and still commuting to college, you've still got gas expenses and all that kind of stuff. So the goal is not to cover tuition. The goal is to cover cost of attendance.
Wow.
And the power of that is every single semester, my kids were fully funded at cost of attendance level. So about 3 weeks into the semester, we got a refund check because they send you back the money that you had, that's the overage from tuition and room and board and cost of attendance. So every year or every semester, we got a check back, and I would deposit that money, and then I would eke it back into my kids' accounts throughout the semester for their spending money.
Well, okay, this is where we need to play the "I'm a fan" applause for Janet. This is
yes. Oh my!
I feel like the biggest failure right now.
Guess she got paid to send her kids to school. You hear that?
Well, we did, and I don't know. It was
good job.
That was fun. That was just a blessing the Lord gave us at that time that we needed it.
Yeah. Let me clarify, Janet. So if you were applying for private scholarships, they'll let you use that towards your tuition or your room and board, because most institutional scholarships just cover the cost of tuition.
Every scholarship is different. Some of them do not care. Some scholarships will send the check to the kid. I know my son got one that was just like a check, and he could do whatever he wanted to do. He could buy an Xbox with it if he wanted to. Some of them, most of them are written to the school and your students. And some of them say this can only be used for room and board, or this can only be used for tuition, or some of them don't care. Okay. So whoever's giving out the money has the right to tell you how you have to use it.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, that's great, because it's true that like a lot of times if you're just going based on academic scholarships, like you said, with the ACT scores and the grades, you think, oh, well, it's almost all paid for, but you forget that room and board is at least $5,000 a semester. And, that's going to be money you have to spend.
Parking pass was $600 a year. So, I mean, things like that. You don't think about it. Somebody's got to pay for that.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of hidden cost.
There are.
You've already mentioned essays, Janet. Tell us a little bit about what the typical application looks like. Do they all require essays? And how do you get your kid to write a good essay?
That is a good question, especially as a college writing professor. My first answer is if they can't write a decent essay for a scholarship, then they're not going to be able to do very well in college, because the very first class they take in college is freshman English, where all you do is write essays. So if they don't want to, make them do it, pay them to do it, whatever it is you need to. But I think we wrote like two. One of them was a career goals essay, because that's what most most essay prompts at the time we were doing this asked for. What do you want to do with your life and why? Sometimes there was one that overcoming a difficult hardship. They want to make sure, scholarship committees are just like all of us. When we give money to something, we want to make sure we're getting value for our money. And so the purpose of the essay is to convince them that your student has the maturity, the character, the grit that it's going to take to succeed in college. Mm-hmm. So, whatever they're writing about, they need to make sure they're showing personal examples of, how they overcame something, or how they learned to be grateful for something, or how something led to personal growth, those kind of things. So sometimes I saw prompts that said, how do you define success? What person has most impacted your life? But really, the career goals and overcoming a difficult time in your life kind of were the ones that my kids had a limit too. They were only going to write 2 essays. So I could only apply for scholarships that would accept those essay prompts.
Well, I'm just laughing because I just went through this last year with my son that goes to college next week. And from the prompts, we picked a hardship you've overcome. Okay, he has never been drastically sick. Nobody close to him has died. He hasn't had to move out of his house. There just hasn't been anything super hard. And it was really hard for him to write that essay. And I won't even tell you what he picked because it's kind of laughable. But anyways, he would write he wrote a rough draft. And so then I'm trying to expand the paragraphs and sending it back to him and saying, can you write 3 more sentences in this paragraph? I have nothing else to say. And I'm like, I know, I have nothing else to do, but, try to come up with something in your brain. I don't even care how you embellish it. These essays are harder than they look, Janet.
Yes, they are.
Especially if you're not sure what your career goals are. It's does that mean I don't need a scholarship if I don't know what my career
what if you're undeclared?
Well, and Mabry changed her major about 3 times. So it's
you just make something up and go with it.
Well, something that is a reason, I would never say make it up or lie, but something that is a reasonable direction that your child has talked about possibly going into. But any of their English teachers would be thrilled to help them write this essay. Mm-hmm. Because, everybody wants your child to succeed at college and to succeed getting scholarships.
Yeah. And another thing for the scholarships, sometimes you have to send in recommendations that have never been opened. They're directly from the person. And you said you put all yours in your notebook. How did you do that?
I specifically remember Mabry got one from I think it was from a doctor, because Mabry had some health issues. And she just printed off multiple copies and put them in sealed envelopes and sent them to me that way. And
the doctor did, or Mabry did. Okay, the doctor.
The doctor sent them to us.
Okay.
And sometimes transcripts have to be notarized and sealed. So, and I think we had to buy those from the school office for $1 a piece. But yeah, I had all the documents like that I needed.
Okay. Yeah, because it really is daunting for kids to even go and ask their teacher. Some kids to even ask their teacher for recommendations. And then some of the teachers, they say okay, I'm willing to write 10 recommendations this year. And when I'm full, I'm full. So you need to get in there at the beginning of the year and say, yes, Mr. English composition teacher that I love, put me on your list to write a recommendation. Because once he fills up, he's not going to do anymore.
Right. Or ask him in the summer when, everybody knows teachers don't do anything in the summer.
Oh my goodness.
That was a joke, by the way.
I wouldn't even dare contact a teacher in the summer. I would feel like that was contacting them after hours.
Well, that's true.
But yeah, there's a lot of work. Your kids had to do work, even though they weren't even though you were doing more work, there's still a lot of work that kids have to do.
Yeah.
So what if you already have a job? How are you supposed to get your kids to do all this work?
Well, that is a parenting episode that y'all need.
She's already mentioned paying. I'm hearing threatening, bribery.
I will be taking your car keys until this application is done.
Sit them down and make sure they understand the kind of money that we're talking about. This is a whole lot of money. And yes, kids can take out loans, but I have paid off student loans. That is not fun. And that should not be that shouldn't be the first resort. It should be a last resort and as little as possible.
Right.
Okay, Janet. So let's hear what you got for all of your hard work. Can you share some results, some specifics?
Well, we applied for 44 with Mabry. Since I got rid of my notebook in the last move, I can't tell you how many of those we got.
Okay.
And we applied for about 20 for my son, but combined, they got awarded over $435,000.
That's amazing, Janet.
That is like my son got a free ride to 2 colleges for 4 years. Plus they just had tons and tons of money. Now, not like we got $435,000, but all totaled up, that's how much they won.
That is amazing. And you would not have been able to go to work, most likely, and make $400,000, right?
Probably not. Probably not. All of my years working together probably would.
Well, that is awesome. I mean, it really was worth it, and I'm super impressed.
Yes.
Well, it worked for us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. What a wealth of information you have. Gosh.
Yes.
I'm going to have more questions for you, Janet, as we enter into this again, like in a few years.
Well, I'd be happy to tell you what I know.
Now, listeners, Janet is just a private person, so she does not have like this scholarship how-to website to link to, but she is willing to give out her email here on Midlife Matters. So, Janet, will you give us your email? And if you want to personally contact her with questions or advice or just what she did, clarifications, anything you want, she's willing to email you back. Janet, what is your email?
My email is Janet Addison, JanetAddison at me.com. And I do have handouts and things like that I can email people if they are interested.
Yes. Well, I don't know who wouldn't be interested in getting free college. I mean, really?
Oh my goodness.
Especially when you hear that dollar amount. That's just, I'm still taken aback by that.
I know. That is awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, Janet, before we go, we definitely like to do I'm a Fan. And we always let our guest go first. So, Janet, what are you a fan of this week?
I am a fan of these Pair eyewear glasses. I fell prey to an Instagram ad. And
that's why you're Julie's friend, right?
Yeah, it's terrible. But I was adding up today. I have worn glasses for 45 years, and these actually make me happy. I have a base pair of glasses. I bought clear, and then there are these magnetic colored toppers that you just pop on.
Amazing.
And they even have Harry Potter plaids. There's all kinds of things, and sunglasses things. So it has made me so happy. And I could have sold 1,000 pairs of these just from people seeing me clip them on and off. So this is one of those $1 million ideas that I'm kicking myself that I didn't come up with. Yes. But it's Pair, Pair eyewear.
Yes, and listeners, you can't see Janet, but basically she has clear rims, and you can then magnetically hook on colored rims over them, and it looks just like they're part of the glasses, and she was able to just hook on her sunglasses. So definitely we'll put a link to this in our show notes. For anyone that wears glasses, it gives you so many more options.
Yeah, and Janet's always been known by her stylish glasses.
When you wear them every day for years and years and years, you have to make them interesting and fun.
Yeah. Yes. All right.
Wow.
Well, Julie, what are you a fan of this week?
I'm a fan of a podcast that I discovered on a road trip that we were just on. And I love the Olympics. It's my favorite 2 weeks of the summer. And this was a short podcast. I think it's about 5 short episodes. And it's about the women's gymnastics all-around finals at the 2000 Summer Games in Sydney. And the tagline is that it reveals the untold true story of one of the biggest mistakes in Olympic history. And it's nothing sinister. It's nothing about the sexual abuse scandal. It's just a mistake that was made and how it affected all the athletes and how they dealt with it. And the story was never really told.
Well, how many
Oh, wow.
episodes is it, Julie?
There's just 5, and they're
Okay.
about, I think the longest is 20 minutes. So I had it on double speed. I got through the whole thing
wow.
really quickly.
And who are the famous names from that year? Because that's kind of how I remember things. So who was in the Olympic Games that year for gymnastics?
I did not recognize the names.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, so it's no
No.
one that we would still recognize today.
No. And unfortunately, I think it's because what happened there.
Oh,
Ooh,
okay.
I don't want to
mistake
spoil
that-
it, but yeah.
because
right.
the mistake.
Yes. Well, what's the podcast called again?
It's called Blind Landing.
All right. Well, that sounds interesting. So if anyone needs a quick 5-episode, 20-minute each podcast, that sounds like a good one. All right.
Yeah.
Mindy, what are you a fan of this week?
This week, I'm a fan of an app that I have found myself looking at and really enjoying daily. The name of it is Chris Loves Julia. And this, they started a blog actually years ago. And so they have a huge following already. And I've just found them through another decorating app. But basically, they do like home renovation. They share things on decorating. When you're decorating on a budget, she'll do like a daily dupe. So she'll show an item that's like really expensive versus an item that's really cheap that you can find. I have already even ordered rugs off of Amazon that they have designed. So
Interesting.
I've gotten a couple of beautiful rugs based on their recommendation. And then I was like, oh, wow, it's their line that they worked with. So anyways, they've been out there for a while, but they're a sweet family. Like it's very positive. It's enjoyable. Also, Janet, you and I have moved a lot. They have just moved. And so she shares like how they're renovating a new home right now. And it is so enjoyable. The content that she shares that they share every day. It's really impressive. So it's called Chris Loves Julia, and it's an app on Instagram.
Okay, now, Mindy, you said that they have an app, but do you mean that it's an Instagram account?
I'm so sorry. This is how good I am. I'm so.
She can't even say the word technological.
I'm so bad at technology. Chris Loves Julia is a blog, but this is an Instagram page that I follow. Did I say that right? Is it called a page? An Instagram?
It's an account. It's an account.
An account. See, that's what it is.
Okay.
All right.
Follow Chris Loves Julia
on Instagram. At Chris Loves Julia. All right. No, I have read their blog and also follow them on Instagram, and they do have a lot of good ideas. And I think they did just move to like maybe North Carolina or
North
something.
Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's real cool. All right. I'm a fan of a book, and maybe you have read it being an English teacher, Janet. Have you read American Dirt?
If it's not Regency fiction, no, I have not read it.
Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Well, I picked this book up. It came out last year. It was actually one of Oprah's book club books. So it was on all the new book lists. And I picked it up last year. And they said it was going to be so riveting. And I just couldn't get more than a few pages into it. But this year, I decided to try the audiobook. And I really did enjoy it. So if you try to read it and you don't like it, maybe try the audiobook. I thought it was really well done, the actress that did it. But anyways, it's a 2020 novel by American author Janine Cummins about the ordeal of a Mexican woman who had to leave behind her life and escape as an undocumented immigrant to the United States with her son. Now, this is a fictional story, but what stories like this do for me is kind of give me maybe a who or a why or a what. And all we ever hear about, well, not all we ever hear about, but we hear often about the crisis at the border. But this was interesting to learn why someone might be trying to get across the border illegally, what they might go through to get across the border, why they left their country. And so it was interesting to me to read the process and what they went through, and it raises a lot of questions. So it's a good story, and I really think it's like something that would be great to read in a book club and have a great discussion.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's fictional, but it kind of reads like nonfiction.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Janet, thanks so much for joining us today. We are so happy to talk with you and so inspired.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Yes. Thanks
Thank
again for
you.
coming on. I can't wait to have you again.
I know. What will you talk about the third time you come on, Janet?
No, she's so organized. I want her to teach me how to organize everything.
That's what she should talk about is home organization.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Goodness. Well, I mean, she did say how organized she was about those scholarships.
Mhm.
That's right.
For sure. All
Yep.
right. All right, listeners, come and find us on Instagram this week at Midlife Matters Podcast. We will link to Janet's account on there, and be sure and email her. Give that email one more time, Janet.
JanetAddison@me.com.
JanetAddison@me.com if you have any questions or you want her to email you any handouts. All right, Janet, thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, girls.
We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.